On July 8, 2784, Alexander Kerensky broadcast a single word that would forever change the course of human history. After years of fighting to preserve a doomed Star League, it became increasingly obvious to the revered Star League Defense Force General that there was no way to prevent an oncoming apocalyptic event for humanity. Over 5 months, he worked with other SLDF officers and soldiers who shared his opinion. They collected ships from every corner of the Inner Sphere, supplies and weapons from bases and caches, and recruited brilliant minds that could be invaluable once their mission reached their destination. Once the word was spoken, people leapt into action, moving materials and people to the predetermined rally points in the new Samarkand system. That single-word order from Kerensky was Exodus. Most fans of history can recount the basic events leading up to Kerensky's exodus from the Inner Sphere. They can point to treasonous Amaruses and squabbling lords of the Inner Sphere houses, but this isn't going to be that story. I want to tell a lesser-known story, one that has been shrouded in mystery, and even from the descendants of those who participated in it. This is the story of what happened to those who took that literal leap of faith into the unknown. This is the story of the Exodus. It would have been impossible not to notice the collection of jump ships and warships arriving at the new Samarkand jump points. In fact, word had reached Luthien and questions were being asked. Kerensky knew it was just a matter of time before those questions would require a response, but each day that passed allowed more ships to arrive with more goods and people that were crucial for the journey's success. He had asked a lot of those under his command, and leaving anyone behind would lead to tragic consequences. Eventually, with the arrival of Chusa Raymond Saintsy in the fleet with direct instructions to find out what exactly was going on, Kerensky knew he could wait no longer. When the Chusa finally reached the bridge of McKenna's Pride, Alexander Kerensky greeted the envoy personally and informed him of their plans to take this massive fleet of thousands of ships and leave. Initially, the Combine officer assumed leaving meant either an attack on the Combine or possibly a campaign into House Davion territory. Immediately chastised for being self-centered by Nicholas Kerensky, Chusa Raymond again asked for clarification. Alexander Kerensky then stated that they were leaving the Inner Sphere entirely. The Combine officer barely had time to process the implications of the bulk of the SLDF leaving the Inner Sphere before he noticed the ships on the holotank making their jumps. Chusa Raymond Saintsy ended up being one of the last people to join the Exodus fleet, albeit unwillingly. On the 5th of November, 2784, the Exodus fleet jumped with 80% of the SLDF from the new Samarkand system heading toward the periphery. Though the fleet was spotted again at the Gutara system, after that they were gone. Unfortunately, there were some SLDF forces that either did not receive the Exodus order or were delayed to the point that they could not reach the fleet before Kerensky's departure. The Black Warriors were a loyalist SLDF unit which intended to join Kerensky, but due to what has been referenced as a communication error, they were left behind. Left embittered and wrapped up in their own struggle to survive, the Black Warriors turned to piracy, and those who have seen my Circinus Federation video know how that turned out. The 295th BattleTech Division would face an even more tragic fate following mechanical issues which prevented their unit from reaching the new Samarkand rally point in time to join the Exodus fleet. Loyal to the core, the 295th fought against Stefan Amaris' forces on the Terran hegemony, and by all accounts were eager to stay by Kerensky's side. With every passing day, the mechanical issues in their transports made it less likely that they would be able to travel from the Rimworlds in time. Sure enough, by the time they reached the new Samarkand system, Kerensky and the Exodus fleet had already vanished. The 295th now had a very short list of bad choices. They could return to their deployment zone and end up being absorbed into the Lyran Commonwealth, or form a mercenary unit like the Eridani Lighthorse, but both seemed to be a capitulation to the coming violence and greed that had driven the 295th into the Kerensky camp in the first place. The other option, which even at the time was understood to be the most dangerous, was to try and catch up to the Exodus fleet. Without a final destination or even a planned course through the stars, their jumps would be left to guesswork and blind faith. Several weeks behind, the 295th BattleTech Division's transports jumped into the unknown. Those that saw them go speculated concerning their ultimate fate. Some assumed that they had perished along with the rest of Kerensky's fleet out in the periphery when their supplies ran out and equipment eventually failed. Others discussed the possibility of missed jumps that would leave the Exodus transports too far from any star to recharge their drives. It wouldn't be until 3021 when at least the 295th's fate was discovered on a little planet called Buffalo Meadows around a faint red star in the Draconis Reach. On July 8, 2785, after making one final jump, the KF jump drive on the SLS Ulithi was shut down one last time. The mechanical issues that had delayed the departure of the 295th Division continued to plague the small fleet and had finally ended their journey. Without a functioning jump drive, there would be no more searching for the Exodus fleet. They were stranded in this system with a small blue planet orbiting a faint red dwarf star. A half-dozen jump ships and warships made their way toward the planet and their ultimate fate. 236 years later, the ComStar-funded Explorer Corps would stumble upon what would eventually be named Dig Site Delta. The mound of raised earth could have been mistaken as natural, but the keen archaeologists on the Corps team quickly noted the unique features which set it apart from the surrounding terrain. Contained within that mound of earth was a treasure trove of Star League technology, including battlemechs. It also contained the information which filled in the last pieces of the tragic puzzle of the 295th Division. While they did successfully land on the planet and constructed a colony, most of the expedition was soldiers and their families. They lacked the technical knowledge and equipment required to support a successful settlement. Survival was tough, and over the next few decades, the death rate for settlers far outpaced the number of births. Their settlements on the eastern coast of the planet's largest arable continent were never able to provide enough surplus in food and materials for long-term subsistence. By the 2800s, the last of the 295th's descendants passed away after almost 80 years, marking the end of a sad chapter of Exodus history. Back among the ships of the Exodus fleet, all was not well. After months of jumping from star to star, most of the people in Kerensky's fleet were not privy to conversations about an ultimate destination. Even ships' captains were kept in the dark and simply fed new coordinates for each next jump, which took the fleet further out into the periphery and then seemed to turn back from spinward to coreward. Kerensky and his cohort understood how important it was to avoid being found by any forces from the inner sphere, but to many in the fleet, it felt like they were wandering without any purpose at all. Rumors were rampant in the fleet that they would just travel forever until the supplies ran out, looking for suitable systems. The frequency and intensity of those rumors increased over time, especially among civilians who were not deeply loyal to Kerensky and his vision. It didn't help when rationing was implemented in order to stretch out the fleet's supplies for the millions of passengers. In his personal journal, Colonel Stephen McKenna wrote, "The mood in the fleet is teetering. Some of the ships are still extremely motivated. Most are alternating between the need to continue on and the frustration that there isn't enough food or room. Some are downright sour. There's not a lot that we can do in deep space. But then there are a few where someone has very obviously been aggravating the problem, working the civilians up into an uproar. All the counselors and entertainers in the fleet won't be able to fix that problem." Frustration and fear turned into dissent and anger as the months passed. Clan history is either neglected to note what that catalyst was for the eventual mutiny, or it was deliberately erased. The situation was complicated by the involvement of Kerensky's younger son, Andrei, who was manipulated into showing up for a meeting on a ship named the Hermes that was supposed to be for airing grievances in a peaceful manner. Instead of being a passive listener, the events of the meeting room soon had Andrei standing on stage next to an admiral who was rapidly pushing the group toward mutiny. No matter the grievances, and if they were legitimate or not, on August 19, 2785, the Texas-class warship Prince Eugen, along with 8 other ships, announced their intent to return to the inner sphere. Forced to act quickly, lest the mutinous voices gather support from other ships, Kerensky tasked Major Elizabeth Hazen with capturing the Prince Eugen. Her swift action, leading to a strike force of 160 Marines, quickly ended the mutiny on the warship. The surviving captured officers leading the mutiny were paraded for the other ships, and they gave up without a fight. The next day, a military tribunal was organized, and each of the officers who participated in the mutiny above the rank of major were found guilty of high treason and executed. Nearly 300 SLDF soldiers paid the price for their treason. While that may seem rather severe, keep in mind that the Exodus fleet had every expectation that they would be hunted by the great houses of the Inner Sphere, even if just to get their hands on the SLDF technology. Alexander Kerensky even commented that the breadcrumb trail from the mutineers would put the entire fleet at risk when they did arrive at their destination. Someone would share the route the Exodus fleet took in some dive bar, and word would spread. Recently discovered oral history records missed by clan censors included a detailed rumor that suggested that Nicholas Kerensky, Alexander's eldest son, was behind both the mutiny and Andrew's involvement in it as a scheme to highlight the officers who were most likely to betray the mission. Nicholas's rationale was that sooner or later there would be a mutiny, so better it be one that they orchestrated and controlled and could mop up quickly than one that was organic. We may not know for sure if there is truth to this rumor, but it is an interesting insight into Nicholas's character and fits with his brutally pessimistic personality. With the mutiny squelched, Kerensky sent the following messages to the ships of the Exodus fleet. Return to the inner sphere is impossible for us. Our heritage and our convictions are different from those that we left behind. The greed of the 5 great houses and their council lords is a disease that can only be burned away by the passing of decades, even centuries. And though the fighting may seem to slow or even cease, it will erupt again as long as there are powerful men to covet one another's wealth. We shall live apart, conserving all the good of the Star League and ridding ourselves of the bad, so that when we return, and return we shall, our shining moral character will be as much our shield as our battle mechs and fighters. General Order 137, December 5th, 2785. With the trials finished, and Kerensky's explanation of the situation in front of every participant, an unsteady peace settled in amongst the ships of the Exodus fleet. The reality of the situation couldn't be changed, and people were still feeling the pressure of life, stuck in cramped conditions, on partial rations, and with seemingly no end in sight. It wasn't a democracy, and for many civilians on those ships, not having a say in their destinies caused a lot of resentment and depression. For some, that frustrating lack of control manifested in violence. In his personal diary on July 4th, 2786, General Aaron de Chevalier wrote, "Still, we must find what we are looking for, and soon. The operation is months behind schedule. Even among the senior staff, morale is flagging. They're looking for answers to give their people, but what they don't understand is that we don't have an answer to give, other than to wait patiently. The astrographers think that they have some possible matches to what we're looking for, but they've said that before." By August, the fleet seemed to be just barely hanging on to their humanity. The civilian population was dealing with widespread discontent, criminal behavior, and rumor-mongering about supplies being poisoned or going missing, causing bouts of hysterical panic. Among the enlisted SLDF, morale was collapsing. It seemed that the unshakable confidence that had led so many brave soldiers to throw in with Kerensky on his grand experiment was crumbling after all. To many, it seemed as if the Exodus had become a death march. In our next episode, we'll discuss the end of this initial exodus and how it impacted the people who were challenged with the possible insurmountable task of rebuilding civilization. Until then, if you enjoyed the video and hit all the buttons, the YouTube algorithm is eager to know if it's worth sharing with others. Big thanks to channel members and Ko-Fi supporters who are helping to directly bring this content to you. I very much appreciate it. Our newest supporters include Josh Fritz, Dwayne Oldson, and Magnus. You guys rock, thank you. Until we meet again, take care, go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.